All right. We are at 6:05, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the music down. And get started, and we'll keep letting people in as they arrive. But I wanted to give some info about UXPA Kansas City and what we're about, and then introduce Kenbra, who's going to take the show for the rest of this event. So just some really quick housekeeping announcements before we get started. I wanted to let you guys know about some events coming up in May. Wednesday, May 18th, we have our usual monthly UXPA Kansas City happy hour at 4 p.m. That'll be virtual on Zoom. And then the week after that, we're hosting an event with Ted Gies. Angie, you can correct me if I mispronounce that, of Elsevier, called The Business Case for Accessibility. And we'll have an RSVP link for that coming soon. And in June, we're flirting with the idea of coming back in person for a happy hour or event. But we'll have more about that very soon. We're really excited about our community, which you can join at this link. We have, ways of engaging more passively if you like to just join us by MailChimp and email list. But we also have been running our virtual community over Slack, and it's just constantly like fun conversation between user experience designers and graphic designers and people in all stages of their career in UX around Kansas City. And today there was a conversation about how people stay productive as UX designers. So I've got lots of great tips about every kind of productivity tool for UX designers that could possibly be. So if you don't want to miss out on that kind of conversation, go to this link and sign up, or just message me directly in Zoom. And there's been times when people have not gotten the link for this. So I want to make sure everybody who wants to be in the community gets in the community. So the house has been kept. I'm going to transition over to Kenbra and stop sharing my screen so Kenbra can share her screen. I'm really excited for her talk today. Kenbra is a product and experience coach at H&R Block. She describes her work as helping humans to help humans through empathy and technology. And I just thought that was such a great description, because at the end of the day, everything we're doing is about improving human beings' lives. And she's just such a great case study in this, especially these last few years with the pandemic, like bringing collaboration in the workplace to the remote space. I just saw an article today about how virtual meetings have a cost to innovation. There's a study that was done that said that people who just engage on Zoom like we are right now aren't innovating as well as they could. But if you read the details of the study, a lot of it has to do with just staring at a screen and listening to a lecture, basically. So what Kenbra does, it kind of breaks those boundaries and uses techniques for brainstorming and collaboration that shake people out of their comfort zones in good ways. So with that, I'm just super excited for this talk, and I'll hand it over to Kenbra. I'll do my best to field questions and comments on the chat while she runs the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan, not Daniel, Dan. I'm going to break myself of that habit. I've known Dan too long. Hello, everyone. Thank you to UXPA for having me. I always get excited and energized when I get asked to present on a topic, because I don't just present to what Dan said. I try to make it as collaborative as possible. And I use the most amazing tool to do so, which is Miro. And I think, Dan, you're going to drop the link to the board out there for everybody. And I'm going to share my screen too. for the folks that are seeing this recorded, but I also want to invite you to join us on the board because you'll also be able to interact if you want to. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get moving. And I know that we don't have an extraneous amount of time. So, so this is our UXPA board for today. I had some fun playing with the Kansas City skyline. I got feedback from Brian Bustos right before that I'm missing a few buildings. I'll need to go back and do a V2 on this, but the essence here is UXPA KC. We know that there's possibly some folks that maybe aren't from the area too. Welcome. From a board perspective, when you jump out to the board, feel free to run over to the start area on the far left. We're going to be moving from left to right. Our goal today, I'm going to try to get us as smoothly and as inspiringly as possible to our primary activity, which will be in innovating. And then there's also a template for that activity on the far right of the board where you can actually plug and play and get used to playing a Miro, or if you have a Miro space of your own, you can copy it over. So we're going to dive right in. And I'll get you introduced to Miro if you're new to it. I'm going to do something that I do often, and that's to bring everybody to me and have you kind of follow me around. So designing the future, practical methods for collaborative innovation. So we're kind of in that warm up and introduction part of our session today. We're just going to take a little bit more time on that. I'll introduce myself a little more and introduce you to Miro. And also we're going to get into innovation and what does it mean? We're then going to talk about bringing innovation within reach, which is where the practical methods for collaborative innovation come into the title, and some practical frameworks. I'm going to have a host of links available to you that you can take and explore outside of our session today. And then once we're done, we're going to do just a quick wrap up, and then whatever time's left, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So on occasion, I'll bring you to me. Hopefully it's not too jarring, but that'll kind of help maybe you move along with us. So super fast. So I'm Kenbra. I'm a coach, a facilitator, a mobilizer. Not just by title, that is my passion. It's what I do. I specialize in bringing people together to solve problems that they couldn't solve on their own. I really believe fully that we are better together. I believe that most companies haven't actually truly tapped into the potential of the talent, the people that they already have. And my goal is to help them change that. Anytime that I'm workshopping, coaching, whatever it is that I'm doing, the outcomes I'm seeking is to empower teams. I love bolstering collaboration. That's probably one of my favorite things. It really fills my cup. Cultivating empathy is something that you cannot get away from in these events. And when you're workshopping and collaborating with others, building consensus, bringing that alignment to the table, fostering innovation, and ultimately uplifting culture, which is the ultimate outcome that I seek. But before we jump in, just some real quick things. Cameras are optional. I mean, we love to see you, but don't feel like you have to be on camera. Zoom etiquette, mute when not speaking. Do your best to reduce distractions if you can. We have too many distractions in our life. I actually have my phone face down and I've logged out of my email and Teams and all kinds of stuff. Ask questions anytime in chat. Dan's there for you. He'll field them to me as they kind of come in. Jump in and interact if you want. You are fully just welcome to kind of follow along and listen. If you feel confident and want to interact as we're workshopping in Miro, feel free to do that too. I'd love you to do that. And we'll have a Q&A at the end, but I will pause probably a couple of times to chat with you guys as well. Be respectful and inclusive. That's kind of a duh. And have fun. So I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with Miro, but let's do a real quick start on this. So when you think about navigating, when it comes to PC and Mac users, there's a little bit different when it comes to kind of your zooming with your keys on the keyboard. But just like you would zoom in on something with your keyboard, like a PowerPoint or a website, whether you're PC or Mac, you're going to use those same controls. Moving around the board, you can actually use the arrows on your keyboard. You could use your mouse. You can actually move your mouse around. You can use your scroll wheel to kind of zoom in and out too. I think that works for Some people prefer that. If you have a touchpad, people use that. Also, there's a nifty built-in feature in Miro that if you're having problems navigating, if you actually hold down your space key, it will actually turn your cursor into a hand, and then you can just kind of click on the screen and drag it around. So if you get lost and you're trying to find what's going on or wanting to move around, just think of that as kind of a fallback. From a menus perspective, this is really all we're going to pay attention to today. You have a lot of menus kind of around you. I just want to be real clear on just a few things. Number one, probably the most important, top right, you'll see my picture up there. I have a little lightning bolt next to my image probably. You can look for a photo or anyone that's up there or initials, and you can click on them and you'll actually be able to follow them. So if at any point you feel lost and you don't know where we are, where I am, you can click on my image, it'll bring you right to me. You can also hide cursors. If you actually don't, if you're distracted, and there's kind of that cognitive overload of just seeing all the things moving all over the screen, you can also click up here on the top right, and you can actually hide your cursors. And you won't actually see folks kind of zooming around. I'll probably, unless we get a really insane amount of people out here kind of hiding the board, I'll probably keep them on. If your cursor looks like a hand, like I showed you a while ago, for you to navigate, just click that V button on your keyboard and it'll switch to the arrow. The arrow actually lets you double click and actually edit like sticky notes and stuff. Speaking of sticky notes, we're going to spend a lot of time playing with those. I have some on the board, but if you end up needing more, you can either click on the sticky note icon where the arrow is pointing, or you can click N on your keyboard. That'll actually open up a panel of sticky notes that you can then grab and just kind of drop and start saying whatever you want. What's neat about sticky notes is you can actually click on them, you can stretch them, you can move them all over. But I want to give you guys a second over here on the right to play with that. There's kind of this little play area. Go ahead and do me a favor, add some sticky notes just wherever you're at. It doesn't even have to be in this area on the right. I want to make sure you guys are comfortable doing that. And let us know if there's anyone that's stuck. I also want you guys to play with double clicking and adding a note to it. Anything that you want to say, as long as it's family friendly. Hey, Lauren. Some family friendly sticky note comments. That's amazing. I love it. Hey, this is neat. So I'm taking it that some folks, and maybe by raise of hands, are newer to working in Miro or a similar tool. Would that be fair? Dogs are the best. I agree. Whoever that is, Sean, you're new to it. Miro will unlock your life, my friends. Dan's a fan. Yes, dogs are the best. And I will say this, I have my French Bulldog Gracie in the background. Actually, I say in the background, I don't know where she went, probably making trouble. But if you hear snorting or any bodily noises, it's not coming from me. All right, let's do this. So I'm going to bring you guys with me, and let's come over to just answer a few questions. This is actually some practice as well. Make sure you guys can come over and kind of see where we're at. Let me know if anyone's having a hard time following or kind of moving with, but I have a stack of dots on the left, and just to kind of practice interacting with the board, if you want to, feel free to answer these questions just by picking a color. You've got 3 dots, drag them across the scales of the 3 different questions. So how much do you use a tool like Miro? This is what I'm really curious about. How often do you feel the pressure to be innovative is another one. And how collaborative is your work environment? D's like, I'm out there all day, every day. D, I spend a lot of time in Miro too, if you can't tell. Is anyone having any hard times with navigating on the board, moving around? Okay. So we have some folks who are very new to Miro. It looks like Dee's probably using it the most right now, which is great. If you at any point have any hangups or anything's weird, feel free to either come off mute and let us know, or to just comment in chat and Dan can kind of call it out. We can help you kind of move along. Okay, great.
Definitely, I feel like we have the right number of people for we can make this a little more conversational.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. I agree. Dan's going to also kind of help me keep time and make sure that I'm staying on course. I think we're probably doing okay though. So, all right, well, great. Collaborative. Okay, we got some collaboration going on. That's really good. How often do you feel the pressure to innovate? Daily. Oh my gosh. We have a very nice broad spectrum of those who are like hit with it on the daily versus those who maybe aren't as much. So this will be really interesting to see your perspectives by the end. Okay, great. So when it comes to innovation, I see some hands raised, by the way. Dan, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was saying, I was testing out the raise hand function.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Okay. Raise your hand if you're new to Miro.
Okay, great. All right. Well, a lot of the presentation will be kind of, it'll be a big mix of presentation where I'll kind of bring you along with me, and there'll be some parts to interact where if you want to interact. We do have one specific exercise later that will be a little bit more interactive. So if you guys are having a hard time, definitely during that, please let me know. But when it comes to innovation, if you do a Google search, whether it's images or just searching for the word innovation, you're going to come across probably a lot of images with a lot of light bulbs. I don't know, whenever you think of innovation from a visual perspective, if you consider things like that, or what pops into your mind. When it comes to thinking of it as a noun, it's described as being the action or process of innovating. Making change, as a verb, it's about making changes in something established by introducing new methods, ideas, or products, or creating something new. As an adjective, we're looking of a person who is innovative as being someone who's introducing new ideas, original and creative in thinking. So there's a lot of different lenses that we're putting on this, of whether we're in a group, whether we're alone. But a lot of it has to do with, interestingly enough, a process. And there's a lot of pieces and parts to it, and we'll kind of get into it. And I want to do something really quickly. I have loaded up a lot of different quotes related to innovation. And I would love to hear your thoughts on some themes that you're hearing. I'd also love to know who you think is actually saying these things. So as an example, you shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. You should be doing them because they need to be better. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you're not innovating enough. Starting and growing a business is as much about innovation, drive, and determination of the people behind it as the products that they sell. Any ideas on possibly who this is coming from and any big themes that you're kind of hearing? It is actually from one individual, and I will share here in a moment who that is. Paul, what are your thoughts? Do you have any guesses?
Well, I'm just thinking that I don't know who the person is, but the thought that keeps coming to my mind is that lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. It's important to this job, but I think it's important to life, really. And mm-hmm. you know, that we're always going to be making mistakes. We're human. We never get things perfect ever in this life. So just keep learning and walking in with the mindset that, you know, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to fail, and just pick up and start again.
I love that, Paul. Anything else that anyone else is kind of picking up on?
Angie has her hand up.
Angie. Yes, ma'am.
So I see like a lot of accessibility problems with something like this. How would you, and like, the last slide, the contrast is really pretty poor, with the pink and blue. What would you do if you had someone on your team who, because of reasons of disability, had a hard time using this tool? What is available to make this more disability friendly, especially more visual impairment friendly, is what I know.
That's a really great question. That's actually a question I've had for Miro. So it would be watching contrast, and thanks for the feedback. I feel like this slide especially is really has really strong contrast between the foreground and the background. So that's really great feedback. So let me know as we're moving through where you might have some pain points, Angie, and I apologize for that.
Yeah. That poll is like, the first poll that you did is definitely problematic.
Okay.
So.
Nope, that's really good. Do you have any other thoughts, Angie, about kind of the topic that we're talking about, and in general you would like to add?
Well, I would add too that if you're going to have a really text heavy slide like this, you need to at least read enough of it so that someone who had a hard time seeing all of this can get the gist of it.
Okay.
I mean, right now I'm on a big enough screen, but there are certainly times when I've had to use a screen smaller than my home setup, and I wouldn't be able to read any of this.
Are you able to zoom in? Are you actually on the board with us and able to zoom in more?
Let's see. I am on the board. I haven't used this before, so like.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Finding the tools, but yes, when you zoom in like that, that's very helpful. But
okay,
I mean, that's what I'm talking about as far as pain points. Does that make sense?
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, let me read some of these then. So one of the other quotes is, what makes innovative thinking happen? It's kind of a question. This person's saying, I think it's really a mindset. You have to actually decide to be innovative. Another quote is, when Henry Ford made cheap, reliable cars, people said, no, what's wrong with a horse? That was a huge bet that he made, and it actually worked. So moving on, who we're actually talking about here is someone that's actually in the news right now, Elon Musk. So if you haven't yet, and you have Netflix, and you would like to, the documentary that was done called Return to Space about SpaceX is amazing. It's a 2-hour lesson on innovation from him. So it's anticipating human needs. It's understanding the why behind the what. It covers forming and holding to vision, agility and continuous improvement, having a startup and entrepreneurial mindset, teamwork and accountability, following leading indicators, prototyping and testing, embracing failure as part of learning. And I have a couple of links here if you also want to take a look at it, but he actually has a proven problem-solving framework that he uses. And there's links within the sticky notes. And Elon actually created a school for his kids called Ad Astra, which is really interesting. It's very focused on creative problem solving. He created that because he felt like he wanted to add a little bit more to the teaching that they were receiving. And it's actually really incredibly interesting. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on Elon. I know he's a very controversial person and has been for a while, and probably even more so now, but we're going to kind of move on from there. So I would encourage you to go take a look at it. So when we think of creativity, it's not innovation. They're two things, but you actually need them both. So while closely linked as part of a creation process, they're not the same. Creativity is this kind of spontaneous development of new ideas and out of the box thinking. But innovation is the action and kind of that process of funneling those ideas into practical reality, making a real difference in a product, service, or industry. And on the left, I have a visual that's essentially kind of showing how creativity kind of falls into the funnel. And then in the funnel, you can kind of see the process of how things are becoming a bit more refined, if I was to explain it. Innovation is fundamentally new, tangible shift and departure from the conventional. And there's another way to look at innovation, that innovation funnel. And a lot of us actually work within it every day. And it's called the double diamond or the design thinking process. And there's a lot of different methods and procedures out there that we actually are already kind of tapping into or even using. And I'll kind of cover some of those. But it's in a little bit more reach than what we're even thinking in our day-to-day. Now, when it comes to innovation at its core, it's really interesting because when someone asks you to innovate, what they're really asking is for you to deviate from the norm or think differently, whether they know it or not. So when someone, those folks who marked and said that they're being told daily to innovate, you're being told daily to think differently. In our session, I'm going to share just some practical frameworks that could help you. There's actually quite a few that are linking out to websites, which I hope are accessible. I haven't checked them for accessibility, but if at any point, Angie, you're referencing any of the links and jumping out to the websites and you have a hard time with any of them, let me know and I can try to find something better for you. Okay. When we think of innovation, just at a high level, it's very much, it's about new, it's about different. It also is about creating value for humans. It captures value for business. And it's something that can actually be accomplished. And I have another way to look at innovation, which may not be too far-fetched from how we're operating in UX. And there might be some folks on here that actually don't daily work in with human-centered design methodologies. But when we look at the HCD framework, it's very much talking about viability of business goals, being able to say, this is driving business goals. It's what people need and want from a desirability perspective. It's feasible. So from a technical resource and budget perspective, and when those things come together at the center, you kind of have that, this is where the magic happens. This is where innovation starts. This is a part where we're going to pause and kind of talk too. And I'll read through this. There's quite a bit here, but thinking differently. So innovative thinking is the opposite of what we've been taught about traditional business thinking. And this is difficult. This can be really hard to kind of get your head wrapped around. It doesn't draw on past experiences. Facts don't carry weight. Instead, it imagines what the future could look like. Most importantly, it encourages you to ask the question, what if? And I have here, if you're looking kind of toward the left, this is a little bit more specific to business thinking, kind of more traditional aspects of it, where you're kind of weighing pros and cons. It's very logical, requires proof to proceed, looks for precedents, quick to decide. There is right and wrong. It's very black and white, uncomfortable with the ambiguity, wanting those results. Whereas to the right, we have innovation. It's more intuitive. It's informed, but it's more of an intuitiveness of you're connecting those dots. It's asking what if. It's unconstrained by the past. It holds multiple possibilities. There's always a better way. It relishes ambiguity and it wants meaning. Now, the way that I see this is very much of a spectrum. I also don't feel like this is black and white. I think that all of us, if we did the dot activity here to show where we would fall further left to the right, I will say this, the further left that we lean, it'll be, the harder it'll be to think differently, and thinking differently is kind of that goal. And I do have a sticky note down the bottom right with a little key icon calling out an unlock, where this is why collaboration is so important, because honestly, a lot of times I lean to the left. And I don't know about you. I'm going to give us some time to talk about it. We have definitely a few minutes, and Dan check me on time here of how much time we have, but I'd love to.
We're right on time right now, but one thing that strikes me about this spectrum kind of thing is I actually, as a UX designer, identify a lot with the left side because I am constantly being asked to work within systems and build systems that can be made to be predictable for users, while at the same time innovating and improving. It's like a real battle between the two. Do you find that in your work, trying to strike that balance is a challenge?
I think when we say that we're being innovative, it's really not, it's innovative, period. There's times I feel when we need to be innovative. I feel like it's a part of a framework that we're working in, or we have that hat on at that moment. But there's sometimes when we need to lean to the left and be more logical about something. And sometimes it depends on what part of that funnel that you're in with whatever it is that you're working on, thinking about, trying to work through. I think there is a balance. I think there's also a balance of having heavier collaboration, because you're going to have some folks who naturally lean to the left over the right. They may not be the ones that you want to have in your brainstorming sessions, depending upon what layer you're wanting to bring in, but their opinion is very important at the correct times. What are your guys' thoughts though? Dan shared his. What do you guys think?
Paul raises his hand. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, there's some people that are like a UX team of one. And, Kenbra, you talked about so many times you lean to the left. Well, what if you are a UX team of one? Mm-hmm. How do you collaborate with yourself in a sense, like within your own mind? Because some of us are going to be sort of a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right of this, or sure, in some cases we'll be at opposite ends on certain things as we go down the line, because we're all plural people, right, inside. So do you have any, advice for like, okay, how can I do that? Because, there's a lot of times I catch myself not doing the job. Like, okay, my workday's done and I'm upstairs and I'm watching TV or reading a book or listening to some music or something. And suddenly it's not like a big innovation, it's a small innovation. Like, well, what if we took this one aspect that we're already using, but we did this with it instead? So it's like a small innovation within the product that we're creating instead of, it doesn't have to be earth shattering.
Right. And I love everything that you actually just touched on is kind of the remainder, and kind of where I'm leading us is getting into frameworks that can be used on your own or collaboratively. And they can also be used with the lens of I'm working on a product or service, or I'm literally trying to just better myself as a human, or I'm thinking of my career. Where do I want to go? And that's a really good point about a UX team of one. I do naturally kind of start to lean to the left, but have learned over time to lean more to the right. And a lot of it is really knowledge of and leveraging frameworks to help change my thinking. And one of the primary activities that we're going to do is called Scamper. And it's actually going to help you change your frame of mind around what it is that you're working on. And you're absolutely right that we don't need to see innovation as this massive mountain to climb. It could be that what we're innovating on is how are we going to get to base camp? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I think of innovation, sometimes it feels like this to me, and it is overwhelming. But when I break it down in my mind into its pieces and parts and what's the most important thing to focus on right now, that's where I kind of start to feel, okay, I can do this. Baby steps. Any other thoughts?
We got another hand raised from Angie.
Well, Paul, as I woke up from a deep sleep thinking about one of my presentations that I've got coming up, I absolutely relate to what you're saying. In my role, I really have to almost be constantly thinking both from the left and the right on a regular basis. And what strikes me too is I'm a big advocate of having accessibility in mind from the beginning of the design process, or it doesn't get done. And that means that you have to be both working on, what are the possibilities in design? What can we do that's beautiful? What can we do that's creative and is going to spark people's interest? But you also definitely have to have in the back of your mind these standards, which are very evidence-based, and there are areas where there's not really a lot of room for ambiguity. So I think if we're going to design well, we have to be working within both of these all the time.
That's a really good call out, Angie. And I would say, when you think of a framework really helps you think in, okay, in this current state and time, or whatever time you put on the calendar, we're going to, for an hour and a half, get together, and we're going to do nothing but lean to the right. We're not going to think, and we're not going to consider constraints just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to think of what could be, to even see if there's some possibility, some opportunity of how we can make this better. And then once that falls into that kind of innovation funnel I was talking about earlier, you're starting to tweak, you're starting to refine, you're starting to pull in from the left here, the constraints, what are those rights and wrongs? How do we become less ambiguous? I think as you kind of come down that funnel, you have to become a lot more intentional with those things, but bringing balance, which is what I think everyone's kind of talking to, is important. So good discussion. Well, let's continue.
I just wanted to shout out something Dee said in the chat too. It says, how might we? And yes, and those are great phrases. How might we is something that every UX designer says, like, is drilled into them. And yes, and is the improv phrase. Obviously, it's just like those great questions that get people thinking, try to encourage that open thinking.
Dee, I love that you mentioned those. Those are actually in my recommended practical methods to use too, because I love those. And they're so simple. They're so simple. And you don't think of those as being something that's like an innovative framework. Those are innovative frameworks, So I love that you brought those up. So I want to focus on just kind of 4 what ifs here, and I'll zoom in on, but I'm also going to read them. And I really want us to think, what if, Paul, you mentioned this, instead of seeing innovation as this behemoth mountain to climb, instead we see it and approach it in its pieces and parts? What if designing the future was really more about inclusive design, tapping into multitude of perspectives from various backgrounds to achieve a holistic solution that keeps the user at the center? What if we agree to focus on becoming more innovative, just a little bit more every day, week, or month, even if it's just 1%? Let's bring it back. We feel, some of us are feeling that stress of we need to innovate. Let's kind of bring it back. Let's start to work on, and I'll show you guys some practical ways, some very easy to use and activate ways to start working toward that 1%. And what if this designing the future wasn't as far out of reach as we thought, because we actually have already been doing it? We just need to put just a little bit more intention behind what it is that we're doing. And that's kind of a segue into this idea of being practical about innovation. And that's a tension point when you consider practical and then you consider the definition of innovation. When you think practical, you're thinking that left side of the spectrum we just talked about, and innovation is kind of over here on the right. I think we can bring them within reach and have almost this meeting in the middle of let's just be real, succinct, and what can we do now versus looking at what do we need to do in the next 5 years? Do you know what I mean? So we're not going to be taking on any large scale innovation frameworks today. If you decide that you want to leverage those, in the bottom, I have some sticky notes linking out to some larger frameworks that I am aware of. One of the links is Lean Startup, Design Sprints, which is leveraging that design thinking process in a condensed time frame. Design thinking itself, business model canvases is another innovative framework. And there's more. You guys could probably even drop some in the chat of ones that you're aware of just these bigger frameworks. Three Horizons is one that's incredibly interesting. And Dan, as folks, if anyone's dropping any in chat, feel free to drop a sticky note out here on them. Or if you're out on the board with me right now, feel free to drop a sticky note as well. You remember how to do that. Click N on your keyboard and it'll get you a sticky note. Future casting is one that would make a really amazing workshop. That would have taken probably the entire time today, which would be dedicated just to that. So we all have the ability to innovate. What we're going to be focused on is really just making space for it. We just need to get out of our own way a lot of times to allow it to happen. The definition of practical is very much being concerned with actual doing or use of something rather than with just theory and ideas. It's a method that is achievable. It's something that's within reach, and that's what we're going to be focused on. And here, you're in good company if you've ever said these things. And I want you to, if you're still on the board, you want to interact, grab a sticky note in the bottom and add anything that you're thinking about as well. But have you ever said that I'm afraid to fail? Whether you've said it, have you ever thought it? Or I don't have time to innovate, I'm just trying to keep the lights on. I feel like I hear that one a lot in my own head. Like I'm literally just trying to do what I need to do to keep the day-to-day going, you know? Or innovating is more than a little overwhelming to think about. Getting started is really hard. I feel like I'm paralyzed. I've had a very hard time getting started before as well. I have a hard time thinking differently about things. Yeah, there's some folks that say I'm afraid to fail. Like, yeah, definitely. Yes, all the time. This is something that I feel. I've also had the one of, wow, that was a brilliant idea. Why couldn't I see that? And it's interesting because it's almost like I'm coming down on myself. Almost like, wow, that was like so just amazing and simple. Why couldn't I see that? Whether it's something that I'm working on or something that someone else is, or something new that cool that comes out in the world. I just can't get out of my way sometimes. By the way, these are things that I've said to myself before. So you're in good company. And I feel like there's some folks that are like, yep, this too, yep. Someone does have a question for innovating is more than a little overwhelming. How do I break it up into steps? That is actually a really great question. I actually have a framework that I don't have on the board right now. Dan, when you're sending out the link to the board for folks, I'm going to add an additional article and framework on doing exactly what's being asked right here, how to break it into steps. Because there's very practical ways to do that. And if I attempt to kind of remember it right now, I'm probably going to butcher it, to be honest.
Awesome.
So I will get that to you to send across. Because I think, yeah, and I assume that you'll probably email everyone who could or couldn't join today and can send that along with it. So I feel like that will really help you kind of get your head wrapped around it, because that's super, super important.
Yeah, we'll definitely send this board and the video from this talk, as well as any kind of resources to folks who registered.
Perfect. Okay, great. Let's see here. How are we doing? We're getting there. So let's make some space for it. So here's where we're getting into just more of the kind of the meat and the potatoes, everyone. So, and whether you're able to interact with the board or not, or if you're wanting to just kind of take some of this and run with it later as you have time, Feel free to do whatever you're comfortable with, but making space for innovation is really knowing when and how to apply methods and frameworks that allow new ideas to grow. Making space for it's very interesting, because if you make the right space for it, leveraging the right frameworks, it's interesting the unlock that happens and how unstuck you can become just leveraging the right tools and ideas. Miro is a really great innovation tool. And sometimes, Paul, I will create a Miro board because I just have an idea. And it's just a rough one. It's literally, it's just like sticky noting, which I have sticky notes all over my desk, but putting down an idea and then seeing where I can go, leveraging just a tool like Miro just to kind of ideate. I love it because I don't have to be tied to a physical space, but it's interesting how this tool has done so much to help me be more innovative just with everything that I do. So innovation is really about finding inspiration to expand your thinking and help you get beyond kind of how you've always done things to ultimately transition from idea to implementation. So it's just some practical methods, and you can see on the bottom right here, we're going to focus on Scamper 2.0. But we've got a lot of links here. So practical innovation methods. These are things that are easy to activate and follow through on, either alone or with others, to change the way that you think. Yes, and. Thank you, Dee, for mentioning that one. Defy doubt, which is kind of how I see yes, and. You, for a period of time, don't allow yourself to say no to something, whatever it is that you're focusing on. You're building and ignoring doubt, allowing yourself to remove constraints. How might we's? Yes, how might we's are innovative. And for those who may not know or have leveraged the how might we framework, it's as simple as there's a problem that's happening in my life. Instead of framing the problem just as even just a statement, start it with how might we, if you're working with someone else to do, or it could be how might I focus on this and think of this differently, or how might I leverage my support system and people around me to help me work through this, and et cetera, et cetera. If you click these links and explore them, they're very, I think a number of them are going to be very, they're going to spark a lot of thoughts in you. Mashup, which is by IDEO, which is basically combining inspiration, pulling pieces and parts together to create something new. Framestorming, where you are questioning the question over and over and over again. That's actually one that Elon uses. One of my favorites is the 80-20 rule, where you're doing less with more. That one is incredibly powerful and can be leveraged for not just work, anything in your personal life, actually all of these. And 6 thinking hats is another one, where you change your mind. There are 6 different hats that you wear. You have your problem at the center, and you wear a different color hat for the type of mindset you're going to have looking at that problem. And that's the one that I almost chose for us today, because that one's a lot of fun. Opposite thinking is about inverting your viewpoint. You might look at your problem and think one thing, try changing it and looking at it the complete opposite. And Scamper 2.0. So it's my variation on the classic, which I'm going to walk you through that. Are there any other kind of practical methods or frameworks that you've thought of or have used that you'd like to
put in pre-mortems? I love a good pre-mortem.
Oh, girl, that's good. And explain the pre-mortem for folks.
So in the pre-mortem, I mean, there's several different activities that you do, but the basic gist is to think about how something is going to fail so that you can then, figure out how it won't fail, how you can, create something that won't fail.
That is fantastic. And that one, that would be a very easy one to spin up and just run like a real quick.
It is.
Workshop on or Miro. Yeah, that would.
It is. We used to do it at IBM Watson Health.
That's cool.
But the beauty of it is that where everybody always goes for the happy path, you've then, you've then tackled the thing that is going to hurt you the most first, instead of, coming at that later.
That's amazing. I've heard of this one. I've not used this one, Dee. I'm excited to look up this one. Are there any others that you guys have used or have heard about, whether you've used it or not, that you're like, oh, this would be kind of an interesting one for folks to go research or learn about? Well, if you think of them, 5 Whys, hello. That's a great one. I will.
In there, but
yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
The method of just like answering the question and then asking why, and just keep asking why. And it's inspired by children and how they keep asking why is the sky blue? Oh, because X. Okay, why is that?
Well, why is it blue?
A little bit of child.
Why does it have to be blue? Well, stop asking questions. Is that what a parent is?
I've been surprised by that. It's actually, when you get to the end, it's like, wow, I actually learned a lot about the world.
That's fantastic. I don't know if you guys are on the board or if you're actually seeing the screen that I'm sharing right now. If you want to take a look at the screen I'm sharing, I'll show you an unlock with Miro real quick. What is so amazing about this framework is you can actually, I'm going to kind of zoom down here below the board. There are built-in templates. Miro also has miroverse.com, which is the community of templates. I can click on the template library and I can add ready to go templates to do a lot of this. I'm going to bet there might be a how might we template out there. Nope. I'm going to have to give him a hard time. No, there's all kinds of different. Let's try 5 Whys. 5 Whys. So what's neat is I can actually click use the template. It'll actually drop it into the board for us to immediately start to use. So starting with kind of your problem. Well, why do we have that problem? Well, it's because of this. Well, why is that? Because of this. Well, why is that? So Paul, I would encourage you, you guys can easily spin up a free Miro account. And I think out of the gate, you get like 3 of these boards. They're infinite whiteboards. There's a lot you can do with them and you can play. Like, I really think, especially if you're often finding yourself working alone, I cannot encourage you enough to look into Miro if you haven't looked at it yet. So fantastic. All right, so Scamper 2.0. Dan, how are we doing on time? I want to kind of sense where we're at and know if we feel like, okay, does it feel good to kind of dive into this, or are we just going to be kind of rushing it? And
no, I think we are right on target. It's 7 o'clock and we budgeted about 20 minutes for this.
How did I time that so good? I don't know how. So let me zoom out. And what I'm going to do is my best to kind of walk through the board. There's a lot going on. And it could be Angie to help you out if you're wanting to take part of this activity. Then we can definitely help make this a little bit easier for you. And what I'm going to do is think about this even later of how can I extend this to make it more accessible. I do know for a fact, like with Miro, there's a lot that from a screen reader perspective just can't be done just because of the nature of the tool. But I mean, contrast is one thing, but it would be interesting, Angie, once this is over, because I feel like this might be, I don't know if this is possibly one of the first times you've experienced Miro, but I would love to know more about your perspective on it and things that would have made it a better experience for you. I'm very used to leveraging visuals for the workshopping that I do. So I love everything that you've mentioned, and how can I be more mindful of those things as I kind of move forward with playing in Miro and whatever it is that I'm doing. I see a thumbs up.
Yeah, either email me, and Dan's got my email,
Okay.
or message me on Slack.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
And
I've had thoughts.
and Angie, I talk to Miro all the time. We at H&R Block, we have an enterprise account. We've got like 500 users across the company. It's actually really awesome. Like IT's out there, which is amazing. We actually have our legal department using it. HR is out there. And this is really, of everyone that's been using it, we actually haven't had this kind of a focus on, hey, let's really think about how are we approaching this from an accessibility perspective. So I would love to pick your brain on it more, and also chat with Miro about it, because I know that they care about it too. So Scamper 2.0. So I'm calling it 2.0 because this is actually an old school 1950s rapid ideation tool. Okay. It's about challenging the status quo and exploring new possibilities. I have a link here if you want to go read up on it. But the framework requires you to change your perspective through various questions that you're asked. So like this is a great one for if you're by yourself and you have to work through something on your own and you want to innovate. I also have the template for this on the far right of the board that you'll be able to leverage later. But Scamper, it's an acronym for substituting, combining, adapting, modifying, put to another use, eliminate, or reverse. So you're having your problem at the center of this. And based on the questions, we're kind of moving through different quadrants to answer the question of, okay, we have this problem. What parts of it that's working right that we could combine that would actually help make, like maybe even solve our problem or even make this a little bit better? Or how could we adapt this, whatever it is that we're talking about, and modify it in some way to make it better? Maybe there's another use for it. Maybe we're thinking of the wrong market and the wrong customers. Maybe we could use it for something else completely. And that happens all the time. There's medicines, as an example, that are created with the thought process of it's going to serve this certain type of person with a need. And what they find is, oh, wow, it's actually more helpful with helping others with different things. So the 2.0 part is kind of my updated approach to it. It introduces a wildcard question, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. It's going to provide also an area to visually output big ideas that are forming as you work through the activity. Because the classic one, there's a book on it too. It's an old school book. It's been around for decades. The classic ones very much just kind of work through the acronym. This, I want to kind of provide a little bit more room to play, if you will, to set up for success before you do this. Number one, identify and clearly define the problem to solve before you start doing this. I feel like we don't spend enough time in our problem space, right? We want to just jump into ideating. Number two, gather a diverse group of people to help you ideate. Consider those actually in other roles, maybe even industries. Who's going to have a varying perspective that's going to help possibly be that unlock with what you're working on? Number three, before and during the workshop, foster an environment to be creative, to be brave, and think the unthinkable. And pro tip here is focus on quantity, not quality. This is that innovation space that I mentioned, where for this period in time, we're removing constraints. We're not thinking to the left of that spectrum. We're only thinking to the right. Okay. Be brave, think the unthinkable. Not every idea that you generate is going to be viable. However, I have a way for us to take those good ideas and kind of explore them further. And we'll see how far we get today. I don't know if my audio is set up to play. Daniel, I feel like it might be you. So I'm not going to attempt to play this. Okay. But this is a less than 2-minute video from one of the co-founders of IDEO, which is a very well-known design agency. They actually were a heavy part, almost kind of grandfathers of design thinking, if you will. And it's all about creative confidence. And what's really neat is in this less than 2-minute video, he really unpacks what creative confidence means and having that confidence to not be held back by constraints, and just allow yourself just to be creative, because later we can get into the details. So when we look at the board, I'm just going to call out and bring everybody to me really quickly. And we'll see, because we don't have a ton of time, so we'll see how far we get. So I pre-apologize if we don't get as far as what we're thinking. But the way that the board's broken up is here on the left that I already went through, you kind of have that overview for that setup. On the far right, I have some thought starters, just some questions. I'm not going to have us focus on those in great detail because I think they, just for sake of time, I don't know that they'll probably be helpful as we're kind of moving through it. But if you need some additional help with other information related to each one of those acronyms, this kind of breaks it out a little bit more. So kind of some additional questions that you could ask if you wanted to, but there's a lot of them there. So that'll be something for later if you want to take a look. So number one, at the top of the board is our problem space. This is where we're defining what the problem is and what we're going to focus on. The second part of the board is kind of that scamper arena. It's your idea space. And you'll see there's different quadrants. There's one for each of the acronyms: substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse. There's also that wild card, which is that 8th one that I'll share with you here in just a second. And then at the bottom, you've got kind of an exploration area. It's just this wide open space of whatever the ideas up top that feel like, you know, those might be viable. You can copy paste those down here. And what's great about Miro is you can open another tab in Chrome, go look for something in Google. You can copy paste anything, even from Google, from your desktop, from anywhere. You can drag and drop documents in here. You can, there's actually built-in toolkits within Miro to use emojis. There's also an icon finder where you can find icons just to kind of bring to life maybe what the idea is. So those are kind of the 3 areas. We'll dive into the problem space in a moment. But when we talk about each of the different acronyms, I'm just going to focus in on them really quickly. So when we talk about substituting something, it's what can I substitute or change to make an improvement? So we're going to talk about our problem space. What can we substitute or change about it to make it better? Could I change the rules of how it's working? Those are just some questions. Combining. How can I combine 2 or more parts and maybe create something better? You know, what's really interesting is the iPhone. That's how the iPhone came about. It is. Jobs was like, so this isn't 3 different products. This is one product. And it just kind of mic drop moment. Everyone just kind of, minds were blown. Here's the iPhone. And they're like, what? Where can you build synergy? It's actually really interesting when you take pieces and parts from things that currently exist, even if it's not even a part of what you're currently working on with a problem with a product or a service, and you pull from other industries and pull them in just for that inspiration. It's really interesting if you start to combine things. Adapt it. Adapting means like you can see inspiration in other similar scenarios, but in a different context. You can zoom in, you can zoom out on it, you can change it to anything that you need it to be. Modify. Oh, here's where you can magnify, make it larger. Maybe I can remove it, make it smaller, condense it, lower, shorter, lighter, streamline, split it up, or understate it, whatever. And the last ones are putting it to another use, which is actually quite powerful, because I think a lot of times we think of products and services and even the problems that we're dealing with, and we think of them in this one dimension, when you can actually consider and take kind of the constraints off and say, are there new ways to use it in its current form, or are there other possibilities if we modified it? Could it serve a completely different consumer base? What if we eliminated or simplified it? A lot of times when we're dealing with problems in services and products, it's because we have over-engineered them. They're too complex. Reverse it. This one's a lot of fun. This is a lot like the invert method. that I put under the practical methods library. How can you change it, reorder it, reverse it? What could I do if I like actually literally thinking of it in reverse? And the wild card is really what could be done to solve the problem that's unorthodox, it's outrageous, it's edgy, unexpected, maybe even a little bit rogue. So I think over here on the right with questions, I put under for that one, some thought starters is what would Elon Musk do? How would a child solve the problem? So these over here on the right, or if you get stuck and you're looking for other questions to ask yourself when you're ideating. So what you're trying to do through each of the quadrants and Scamper is you're trying to answer those questions. And it's all about quantity and not quality. You're not rushing. So I know that was a long setup and we don't have much time. I feel like what we might do is we'll jump into the problem space, which I hope that you find entertaining. And we'll see how far we get in Scamper just to kind of prove it out. But there's no specific way you need to work through these. You work through them as you feel it. You can jump around, you can do whatever you want. Are there any questions? I have some sticky notes down here too that you can start to kind of click and drag and move around to work from. Do the different quadrants make sense of the acronym? Is there anything that's kind of confusing about them?
I was going to ask it, should we just go ahead and start throwing in some sticky notes, or?
Yeah, let's do this. Let me get you
what comes
some, let me get you some background on the problem space. So I have times here too of how long you typically take on these things, but just because we don't have much time. The problem space, McDonald's ice cream machines are always broken. I'm sure you guys have heard about this. There's a lot of controversy right now around it. So broken that Elon won't even touch it. This was actually his Twitter this morning. And it's funny because everyone's like, he was purchased Twitter. He's going to fix all these things. And someone's actually saying that now I'm going to buy McDonald's and fix all the ice cream machines. And he says, listen, I can't do miracles. Okay. So Elon's not even going to attempt to fix these McDonald's ice cream machines, but we've been hired to help them get ice cream to their customers consistently and with limited downtime. Okay, this is what we're innovating on. So don't be constrained by we have to even use the current ice cream machines. It could literally be some other method or way to approach this. Okay, all right, Paul's nodding. It's become such an epidemic that there's actually a website. It's called McBroken. Check it out later. Also, there's some real problems with them not cleaning them properly. And I feel like that's probably one of the big problem areas. So anyway, these machines are pretty heavy. Like if we look at just some quick facts on these, and so you see how I'm kind of giving you guys the background on the problem. This is important before you get into the activity. These ice cream machines are different from other ones. Their ice cream cells make up a huge amount of what they're making. They're very difficult to clean. There's no easy way to really repair these. And if you decide you want to read more on this, you can do it after the workshop. Here's the link. With Mira, all you do is click on it and click the little icon that pops up to take you to the actual source. So let's do this. I think I'm just going to let you guys have at it. Is anyone having a hard time moving around the board? Or if anybody wants to actually interact out there, but I'm just going to add 5 minutes and we'll see how far we get because I know we don't have much time left, but and just let you guys go. And don't feel like you have to start with any specific piece and part. Just remember, we are trying to solve for the ice cream epidemic. All right, I'm going to put 5 and we'll see where we get. It's about rapid ideation. Don't overthink it. Just go for it. Freya, I love, girl, you went straight to the wild card. Love you.
I'm loving this music too.
This is built in Miro.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Start
cool.
the timer. Start the timer. There's a music library. I should have invited Mira to this. And Angie, let me know if you're having any problems, girl, okay? Uh-oh. Paul, I don't know how you got that unlocked. You're like the wizard. By the way, you can lock down objects in Miro so they can't be moved, but somehow Paul found the magical button.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that.
I'm teasing you. Teasing you. Substitute the ice cream machine with prepackaged half pints of non-dairy ice cream. Paul, you're on it. You got it. Even if you just come up with one for just a couple of different ones. For adapt, we have sell the ice cream mix instead. Make your own ice cream. Oh my God. That's a fantastic idea. That's a really good one. I feel like it's hilarious to me. Freya, I think somehow you figured out, I don't know what's going on with Miro. Somehow things are getting unlocked. Let's see here. For wildcard, we have, and I love it, commission NASA to make the perfect ice cream machine the way they made the perfect zero gravity pen. Or this one's so great. Go next door to Wendy's and buy their ice cream to sell. I have a poll. I have a question. Do you dip your fries in your Frosties? Give us a yes or no in the comments. And if you don't, I might judge you. I'm teasing. My husband does.
I don't, but now I want to try it.
Partner with Oatly. Oh, is that like a oat milk company?
Yes,
Cool. I've not heard of them.
they make ice cream too. So
Neat. Build a device that cools the earth so much that no one wants ice cream anymore. Okay. That is the craziest. That's like in my mind. If we have a rocket award, that's probably the most out there. That is the most out there wild card.
Kill two birds with one stone. You get the end of climate change.
No ice cream at all. That's wow.
Or just
yeah.
wow.
Eliminate it. Just get rid. You're not going to have a problem if McDonald's just does not serve ice cream. So then my question becomes, based on our problem, how are we going to make up for the revenue that's going to be lost? Let me bring that down here. How are we going to, this is our new problem. What's the answer to that? So see how it kind of builds and see how you can have fun with it and just kind of, if you give yourself space to innovate, take those constraints off. It's literally just that space and time. But just like Angie said, you got to come back around at some point and be like, okay, now this is where the rubber meets the road. Let's make this thing real. You're then hitting that innovation funnel in that process. Oh, Freya, are you answering this, girl? You're awesome.
It could improve the quality of their cookies. And
oh, girl. Their cookies are so good. Turn the ice cream machine into a slot machine if you hit the jackpot. You guys are hilarious. Okay, that one's just in my mind. So as an example, like I'm dropping just a little rocket emoji on here. We could at that point, that could literally be what you do to pick out your favorites. And what you could do is then actually copy, just like in a PowerPoint, you can like click and grab different things and copy them down into your exploration space. And then at this point, you're starting to pull in pieces and parts of all the different things. There's actually a Google image search that's actually built in to Miro that you could actually start to do and like just start to build out this concept and this idea. You can drop in screenshots. What's neat about Miro is it also has built-in wireframe library. You could actually start to drop in, well, maybe this is what it looks like on a tablet. And maybe first there's this search functionality, and then you're doing et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop being a fangirl about Miro and allow us to, oh, that's funny. It dropped up. Miro's awesome. It dropped up this little tutorial.
You know, you've been talking so much about thinking differently. I think this is one of those, with this particular problem, I think it's one of those ones where you can either really tie yourself to a family member or even to yourself. Because see, like in the last year, I discovered that I should not be drinking or eating anything that's dairy products.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really messes with my digestive system. So the whole idea of using Oatly ice cream or using prepackaged, and Culver's, who sells frozen custard, has prepackaged custard that you can walk out of the store with. So McDonald's could package it smaller, give it through the drive-through window even. And, you know, it's like having a mini Ben and Jerry's, right?
Paul, they should pay you. Need to go work for McDonald's business corporate side. All right. So I know we're kind of at the end. Let's just kind of think through this really quickly, and we'll be kind of there, and then we can do some Q&A. But how to cultivate innovation. We've been chatting quite a bit about it. And I want to welcome you. If you want to participate and add some thoughts out here, feel free to. There's sticky notes at the bottom. But how do we cultivate it in ourselves, in others, in our company? I think there's a lot of different ways. I put some thought starters down. Feel free to add some if you want, but I think being more curious and asking why all the time, like Dan called out the 5 whys, doing that all the time, become more comfortable with ambiguity. It's part of the process. It's okay. There's at some point in the funnel, you got to get rid of that ambiguity, but give yourself some breathing room up front. You don't have to know all the details. Build persistence. It takes grit and dedication to truly innovate. If you watch that Elon Musk documentary, it's going to blow your mind how much that guy went through. You won't be shocked or surprised why he's so passionate about what he's doing. Embrace a growth mindset. Just letting yourself explore how you can do it in others. Encourage others to ask why all the time. Like even when you're talking to people, just be like, don't just say yes to what I'm saying. Let's discuss this. Encourage a growth mindset in them too. Be a safe space for people to bounce crazy ideas off of. Paul, go ahead. You had a question.
We find a different word than growth mindset, that phrase, instead of growth, because growth is not infinite. I really prefer like development.
Oh, I like
it'll change. I'm not always going to grow, and I might actually let go of some part of myself instead, you know, in order to develop.
Oh, that's okay. So like grow. Okay. Yeah, I can get it. I get it. I'm following you. That's really good. Another one is be the person who says yes instead of no, but say yes and. You should check out that yes and framework. It's pretty great. And I'm zooming Dan because I know you want to get to some end stuff here, but in your company, I cap this on purpose. Ask why all the time. And feel free to interject. I'm seeing hands raised, but feel free to just voice over too. So Paul, if you got something to add. Nope, you're good. Aim for, this is something too that's really interesting. Aim for a number of innovation challenges every year. Like start small and then scale it. Like literally say this quarter, I want to get us in a room for half a day. We're going to have this problem that we're going to work through. We're going to have maybe a Miro board to help facilitate it. And we're just going to crank this. We're just going to go and we're going to innovate. We're not going to put any constraints on it. Fostering a test and learn culture. I think, Paul, you mentioned this. I think it was you mentioning earlier about the importance of learning and lifelong learning. We really need that in product and services and really everything. And invest in innovative tools like Miro and build practices around them. So that's basically me. When we're intentional about making space for innovation in our work, our teams, and our lives, the possibilities are truly limitless. Thank you for having me. Connect on LinkedIn. I hope that you guys now might be interested in Miro and possibly using this template. So here it is, and it's blank, and it's for you. So Dan's going to send out the link to it. If you guys get stuck with it, with Miro, Dan knows some about Miro. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me questions anytime.
Thank you so much, Kenbra. This was so fantastic. And
Yeah.
I love the interactivity, and also just thanks to everybody who interacted. I know it's a lot of pressure to put on people, and y'all just ran with it. It's so awesome.
That was great.
Round of applause to everyone. With the few minutes we have left, do you want to open the floor up to questions? I see Jesse has a hand up.
Hey, Jesse.
Go ahead, Jesse. Just take yourself off mute. There you
I
go.
was gonna say, if you're chatting, you're on mute, my friend.
I was mostly just clapping.
Oh.
I was here mostly for observation because I'm considered very much like a newbie. I just started making little tiny, small, interactive, not even websites. They're like 2 pages with like mild interactivity. So I'm mostly here to observe, but doing more things like this. You know,
that's awesome.
Better interacting with people.
That's awesome. Well, great to have you.
Oh yeah, and thank you for presenting. It was very informative.
I'm very happy that you found it informative. Thank you.
I'll throw out a question that Jesse's kind of comment sparks for me is, and it comes from the place of that slide you had earlier that is just about all the voices in your head that keep you from trying things out. And one thing that always stops me is like, this is too fun for people, they just don't like to they won't like to do this, or, this is not the way meetings run, that kind of thing. Like, how do you kind of encourage that among people who are a little bit skeptical and don't want to try kind of like building in creative brainstorming techniques?
So I dropped my LinkedIn link in the chat to make it easier for everybody. Please connect. I love connecting with like-minded people. What's really neat is Miro. Even if you don't use Miro, there's so many awesome tools out there for it. Just trying to change even your meetings to be less, like Dan said, about being just focused on looking at each other, but instead making it somehow interactive. That's one way to kind of lower the entry point. And it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing like I designed. You can literally just do something so incredibly simple. I mean, really, I would almost, if you feel like your culture is probably a little adverse, like Dan mentioned, go simple first. Do some lighter weight things. You can look, Mural is another tool too that's similar. Mural is better, but you can look at just some very easy entry, basic, simple templates just to plug and play and test things out. There's even a whole section of templates on meetings and just making meetings just a tiny bit more interactive. So Dan, I don't know if that helped.
Definitely, yeah, kind of like baby steps.
Baby steps.
I would think practicing on a smaller group too, or a group that's that's going to accept this kind of thing, like the people that you sit around all the time, or your team is probably going to be more acceptable to doing something like this.
And I've actually, Paul, I've been very surprised with H&R Block, very proud of our folks that, like I mentioned, I think our developers, we have probably 1/3 of our users are our engineers, which is insane to me to think about. They're not doing crazy things like this, but they're using the tool to be collaborative around frameworks and diagramming. And there's a million use cases for how you could use something like this. But yeah, I think if you're focusing on anyone to try to get advocates for in your company to work in this way and have a tool like this, I would focus on who are the folks that are going to be your biggest champions, but along the way, pulling in a few folks that are also going to be your worst critics to kind of pressure test opposite ends of it and help meet everyone's needs. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, this has been great. Out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to know, are there any kind of like stories from your experience of like when this has gone really well or in unexpected
it went
ways?
Really bad?
Exactly.
I've not had them go super bad. I think what I would consider maybe something that didn't work out as well would be like running a session with a team that was brand new to Miro and working in this way. And it was interesting because I've worked with so many teams like that. But this particular team, I don't know if it was just their context and the work that they tend to do, but they were very adverse to interacting with the board. And it was very much, I was sharing the board and they wouldn't interact. And I was sticky noting for them and filling in information for them, which worked out. I want to make it easy for people. I don't want them to feel like they have to interact with the tool when they could just chat me on something and I can add it for them. So kind of lowering the entry point, making it a little easier for people. But within a month, I had at least one person from that team running a workshop. Just lowering that entry point, making it easier for them. That's what I try to do. So, yep.
Well, that's awesome. I know we are at time. I want to let people get out there and do what they want to do with Miro tonight if they are so inclined, or just catch the sunset. But Kenbra, this has been so fantastic. Folks, I'll follow up by email with video from this talk, with the board, with some of the links that Kenbra mentioned. And if you have any last parting words, like speak now, forever hold your peace.
Hit me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thanks again,
everyone.
everybody. Have a
Bye.
great night.
See ya.